um, there is a version of you that other people see that you have stopped being surprised by. You move through rooms, you navigate situations, you handle things. You bring to whatever is in front of you the specific, particular, fully loaded quality of who you actually are and what you are actually capable of. And you do it with enough consistency that it has become for you simply what you do. You have normalized yourself. The specific, slightly paradoxical quality of someone who is extraordinary in ways they have ceased to experience as extraordinary because the extraordinary has become their ordinary. Because the strength that startles other people is the strength you have always had access to and have always been required to use, and that has therefore ceased to feel exceptional simply because it is present every day. But here is what I need you to understand. Other people have not normalized you. They are still shocked. I want to begin with the spiritual badass piece because it is in the title and it deserves its full, honest, non watered down description. Spiritual badass is not a contradiction. Some people hear spiritual and picture a particular kind of gentleness, a specific soft edge quality of someone who is attuned to the unseen dimensions of experience and who, as a consequence of that attunement, has a quality of peace and surrender and the flowing with things that the spiritual path is sometimes imagined to require. That is one version of the spiritual. What you are is a different version. You are someone who has done the genuine, unglamorous, often painful work of knowing yourself, of looking at your own interior with the specific unflinching quality of someone who does not look away from what is difficult to see. Who has not accepted the comfortable version of the truth about themselves when the uncomfortable version was more accurate? Who has been willing to examine and dismantle and rebuild the pieces of themselves that were not serving the truest expression of who they are? That work requires a specific kind of fearlessness that is rarer than conventional courage. Because conventional courage faces external threats. What you have faced is internal. The threats to comfortable self-conception that genuine self-examination produces. The specific destabilizing quality of knowing things about yourself that require you to be honest rather than comfortable, that is the badass. The willingness to do that work without flinching, that is the badass. The willingness to do that work without flinching, I want to describe what that work has actually looked like because badass without content is just a word. The content of what you have done deserves to be named. You have faced the uncomfortable truths about yourself, not the dramatic, once in a lifetime confrontations with the self that produce obvious transformation visible to everyone around. The ordinary, recurring, happens in the quiet confrontations, where something in you surfaces that does not match the version of yourself you would prefer to be. Where a pattern becomes visible that is inconvenient to acknowledge, where the honest answer to a question you are asking yourself is less flattering than the answer you were hoping for. You have been willing to sit with those moments, not to torture yourself with them, to actually see them, to allow the seeing to produce the specific uncomfortable clarity that honest self-examination produces. And then to do the specific unglamorous work of changing what the seeing reveals needs, changing, of updating the version of yourself that emerged from the examination. That is not soft. That requires a quality of internal rigor that most people apply only to external challenges. That requires being your own most honest witness rather than your own most comfortable advocate. You have been your own most honest witness. That is the spiritual dimension of the badass. Let me describe what the people who are shocked by you are actually witnessing, because shocked is a strong word, and the content of the shock deserves to be named specifically. They are watching you respond to things, not just the dramatic things, the ordinary ones, the situations that arise in the daily texture of an ordinary life and that most people navigate with the specific, somewhat disorganized quality of someone who is encountering the challenge in real time without having done the prior work that would allow them to meet it cleanly. And then they watch you. And there is a different quality to how you engage. Not because you have no difficulty, not because the things that are difficult for others are not difficult for you, because you have a specific, developed, comes from inside you relationship with difficulty that allows you to be in it without being consumed by it. That allows you to hold the difficult thing and still function at your full capacity. That allows you to keep thinking clearly when thinking clearly is the hardest possible thing. That quality is visible. And it is shocking to people who have not developed it in themselves because they cannot quite place it initially, cannot identify whether it is a particular kind of calm or a particular kind of strength or a particular kind of knowledge. It is all three, and the combination is not something they have encountered in quite this configuration before. I want to speak to the fearless piece specifically because fearless is the word the title uses, and I want to give it its honest content rather than letting it sit as flattery. You are not fearless because you do not feel fear. I want to say that directly because the version of fearlessness that comes from an absence of fear is actually quite shallow. It does not require anything of the person who has it. It is simply a neurological disposition that produces an absence of the specific, uncomfortable experience that most people are trying to manage when they talk about courage. What you have is different. You feel the fear. You feel it with the same specificity and the same physical quality and the same interior weight that anyone would feel it. You have access to the full human experience of being afraid of things that warrant fear and of that fear producing its full range of effects in you. And then you move anyway. That is the fearless, not the absence of the feeling, the movement through it, the specific, chosen, actively maintained quality of continuing to do what needs to be done while the fear is present, of not allowing the fear to be the final word on what you do, of treating the fear as information rather than as instruction. That is the most genuine form of courage available to a human being. Not the absence of the thing, the presence of the thing, and the continuing anyway. Let me speak to the intelligence piece, because intelligent is the third element the title names, and it is the one that I think is most frequently underestimated by you about yourself. Your intelligence is not conventional. It does not primarily express itself in the ways that conventionally get called intelligent, in the narrow, academically shaped ways that society has built its specific measurement tools around, in the forms that produce good test scores and impressive linear reasoning and the particular kind of cognitive performance that gets noticed and labeled and rewarded in the ordinary contexts of ordinary life. Your intelligence is the kind that reads situations, the specific, fine-grained, sees what other people miss kind, the kind that is operating continuously in the background, tracking patterns and noticing incongruities and making connections between things that are not in the same obvious category and arriving at conclusions that are more accurate than what a direct linear analysis of the available information would produce. Things you cannot fully explain how, that is the specific characteristic quality of your kind of intelligence, where the knowing arrived through a process that was not entirely conscious, that assembled information through channels that are not the standard analytical ones. That produced a result that feels like intuition, but that is actually the specific, fast, below the surface processing of someone whose pattern recognition operates at an unusually high resolution. People are shocked by it because it seems like you have access to information they do not have. You do. Not supernatural information, human information processed by a human mind that happens to be operating at a resolution that most people's pattern recognition does not reach. I want to speak to what the combination of these three things produces, because spiritual depth and fearlessness and this specific quality of intelligence together produce something that is more than the sum of the individual parts. It produces an authority, not the kind that comes from position or credential or the specific externally granted forms of authority that institutions dispense to the people who have navigated their particular requirements. The kind that comes from inside, the specific, internally generated, does not require external validation quality of someone who knows who they are and what they are capable of and what they know and what they stand for, with a completeness and a clarity that most people have not achieved about themselves. That authority is visible before you say anything, before you demonstrate anything, in the specific pre-verbal quality of how you are present in a space, how you hold yourself, how the air around you carries the particular quality of someone who has done their inner work and who carries the result of that work in their energetic signature as clearly as other people carry their social presentation. People feel it before they understand it. And the feeling of it, combined with the eventual understanding of what is producing it, is what produces the shock. People feel it before they understand it. And the feeling of it, combined with the eventual understanding of what is producing it, is what produces the shock. I want to describe what the shock looks like from the outside, because I think knowing how your impact registers in other people will help you understand why I am saying this reading is important for you to receive. The shock does not always announce itself. It is not usually the dramatic, visible expression of someone who has just encountered something unexpected. It is quieter than that. The specific interior quality of someone who is in the middle of an interaction with you and who is registering without fully processing yet that something is different here. That the ordinary categories of how they understand people are not quite fitting. That what they expected when this interaction began and what they are actually experiencing are not the same thing. Sometimes it shows in how they listen. The specific quality of attention that shifts when someone is encountering something they were not expecting, where the listening becomes more focused, where the ordinary, distributed quality of social attention consolidates into something more directed, where what you are saying or doing is receiving a quality of reception that tells you the person receiving it has encountered something that exceeded their prediction. Sometimes it shows in what they say afterward to others about you, with the specific, slightly searching quality of someone trying to describe an experience to someone who was not there. There's something about her. She's different. I don't know how to explain it, but That inability to explain is the most accurate testimony to what you produce, because what you produce is not something that fits cleanly into available language. Tell me in the comments if you have been surprised by other people's surprise. If you have encountered the specific quality of someone being more impressed or more affected or more shocked by something you did or said than seemed warranted by what you were doing from the inside. If the gap between how you experience your own actions and how other people receive them has been consistently larger than you expected, tell me how this lands. I want to speak to something about the fearlessness that I think is the most important piece of this reading for you personally. Not for how others see you, for how you relate to yourself. You have been underestimating how much the fearlessness costs, not because it is not genuine, because it is so genuine that you have stopped accounting for the cost. You have been so consistently, so reliably the person who keeps moving through the fear that the keeping moving has become the baseline expectation you hold for yourself. The standard below which falling would be, in your own internal accounting, a significant failure. And that standard is one you hold without giving yourself credit for maintaining it. Every time you move through fear when staying still would have been easier. Every time you looked at the difficult thing directly when looking away was available. Every time you chose the honest version of something when the comfortable version was right there as an alternative. None of those were automatic. Each one required something from you, something that you gave without adding it to any account. It is worth adding up, not for the purpose of displaying the account to anyone, for the purpose of knowing yourself accurately, of understanding that what you have done, the specific, sustained, day after day quality of moving through things that were genuinely difficult, constitutes an achievement that deserves to be known by you, even if you never say it out loud. You have been doing something remarkable, and the remarkable has become so ordinary to you that you may have stopped registering it as remarkable. I want to speak to how the people who are shocked by you are changed by their shock. Because the shock does not simply pass through them and leave no trace. The specific quality of encountering someone who embodies what you are is not a neutral experience. It produces something. For some of them, it produces aspiration. The specific forward-looking quality of encountering something and understanding that it represents something possible, that the specific combination of fearlessness and intelligence and spiritual depth that you carry is not a fixed quality available only to certain people by some accident of birth or circumstance, that it is the product of work, of choice, of the sustained, daily, unglamorous practice of continuing to do the inner work regardless of whether anyone is watching or applauding or even noticing. They see you and they understand something about what is possible for themselves. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, one of the more significant gifts one human being can offer another. Not through teaching, through being for others. Your presence produces a quality of settling. The specific relief adjacent quality of encountering someone who is clearly, fully, unapologetically what they are and who does not seem to require the approval of the room to maintain it, who is not performing the qualities they have, who is simply being them without the particular anxiety of someone who is uncertain whether who they are is sufficient. That quality is rare enough that encountering it produces its own kind of recognition of something that was previously sensed as possible but not clearly seen, now clearly seen. In you, let me speak to something about the world you are operating in right now. Because the reading is not only about how people perceive you, it is about where you are and what the perception means for what is coming. The people who are shocked by you are not just observers. Some of them are relevant. Some of them are in positions to do something with what they are seeing, to open doors, to make introductions, to bring you into rooms you have not yet been in because they encountered you and understood from that encounter that you belonged in rooms that you have not yet accessed. The shock is working in your favor, not in the managed, strategic, I am deploying my qualities to produce a particular impression way. Simply in the way that genuine qualities produce genuine responses in genuine people, in the way that someone who encounters something remarkable and is in a position to do something about it tends to do something about it. Be ready. Not by positioning yourself or managing your presentation or doing any of the deliberate, conscious things that people do when they understand they are being watched, simply by continuing to be what you are consistently in the same unremarkable, unself-conscious, fully inhabited way that produced the shock in the first place. The being is the positioning. As we close, I want to give you one thing to carry. You have built something through all the inner work, through all the move through anyway moments, through all the fearless looking at difficult things, through all the pattern recognition and the below surface processing and the arriving at accurate conclusions, through channels that most people do not have access to, through the specific cumulative daily quality of doing what you do in the way you do it. You have built a version of yourself that is genuinely extraordinary. Not in the performed, self-promotional, look at what I am sense, in the simply what you are sense, in the way that things that are built properly are extraordinary. Not through the announcement of their quality, but through the demonstration of it. You demonstrate it by existing. And many people encountering your existence are shocked by how fearless you are, by how intelligent you are, by the specific spiritual, built from the inside quality of someone who has done the real work and who carries the result of that work in every room they enter. That is what they are seeing. Virgo, it is time you saw it too.